The fight for LGBTQ plus rights has come a long way. We told ourselves it was basically over, that we could finally relax, be ourselves, and stop caring what people thought. But look closely at gay male culture today, and you'll notice something strange, an obsession with being extremely masculine. It's not a written rule, but almost everyone feels they have to follow it. This isn't just a matter of personal taste. It goes back more than 50 years to a long history of social pressure. In the 1950s, during the Cold War and the McCarthy era, homosexuality was widely seen as a mental illness or simply as being effeminate. Doctors believed it, so did most of society. And in that kind of climate, looking masculine wasn't really a choice. It was how you stayed safe. Take Physique Pictorial. It was an underground magazine started in 1951. To get past the censors, it couldn't show gay desire directly, so it dressed it up as something else: health, bodybuilding, classical Greek art. But over the decades, that armor, built to survive, quietly turned against us. What started as protection from outside hate became a cage instead, a way we judge each other and hide who we really are. So how did chasing this ideal end up taking away the very thing it was supposed to protect, the freedom to just be ourselves? In this episode, we'll trace where this idea of masculinity came from in gay culture and look at how it still shapes the way we live and love today. To understand why gay men became so obsessed with masculinity, we need to go back more than 50 years. Back then, the world was built entirely around being straight, and gay men lived in real danger just for who they were. To stay safe, they learned an unspoken set of rules, a hidden code for survival. In the 1950s, as McCarthyism swept across America, homosexuality was widely seen as a mental illness, even a moral disease. Gay men were branded effeminate, and that label followed them everywhere, shaping how they saw themselves and how the world treated them. To win basic safety and rights, early activist groups like the Mattachine Society had to make a painful compromise. When they protested, they dressed in sharp suits and ties, putting distance between themselves and the more feminine, more marginalized members of their own community, all to send the public one message: look, we're just as normal as you are. At the same time, underground magazines like Physique Pictorial found a clever way around the censors. They wrapped gay desire in classical Greek myths and stories of Spartan warriors. The logic was simple. If a statue in a museum counts as fine art, then a man photographed the same way isn't obscene. He's art too. Dressed up as fine art, these images could slip past censors who'd have shut down anything more direct. Because back then, looking hypermasculine wasn't a personal choice. It was the only way to survive. Then came the Stonewall riots of 1969, and the 1970s saw what's now called the butch shift. What had once been a quiet disguise for survival turned into something else entirely: open, deliberate defiance. It started in San Francisco's Castro district. The Castro clone look swept the city, then the country. Work boots, tight jeans, leather jackets, thick mustaches. These were the clothes of straight, working-class men, and now, by the thousands, gay men were wearing them on purpose. It became a uniform, a way of pushing back against everything mainstream society said they were supposed to be. And there's something fascinating going on underneath this. By taking the clothes of the men who'd always looked down on them and wearing them proudly out in the open, gay men flipped the meaning. Masculinity stopped belonging only to straight men. But there was a catch. The same brotherhood that had formed to fight shame slowly turned into something narrower, a club with its own rules about who got to belong. And the men who seemed too feminine, they were the first ones pushed out. In the 1980s and 90s, at the height of the AIDS crisis, the pursuit of masculinity turned into something darker, a desperate fight just to survive. The disease caused severe weight loss. It carried the constant threat of death, and it came with total rejection from society. So many men did the same thing. They rushed to the gym, desperate to build bodies that looked nothing like the disease that was killing them. Back then, lifting weights wasn't about health. It was about hiding, covering up the illness, bracing against the rejection. They built those muscles to shout one thing to the world: look, I'm healthy, I'm not sick. But long after the epidemic passed, that gym culture stayed behind, only its meaning had completely changed. It was no longer a tool for survival. It had hardened into something else, a ruler, used inside the community to measure not just how someone looked, but what they were worth as a person. But this kind of damage didn't start with the disease. It goes back much further, to something built into the culture long before AIDS ever entered the picture. What society has always said a real man is supposed to be: strong, unemotional, in control. Gay men never fit that picture. So from the very beginning, that identity was taken from them. They were branded weak and pushed to the edges of society. And here's the irony. In trying to fight their way back from those edges, many gay men ended up adopting the very same rules that pushed them there in the first place, turning those rules inward and using them to judge each other instead. To prove they were just as tough as anyone else, many forced themselves into that same mold, changing how they talked, changing how they dressed, pushing themselves harder at the gym. And the same harsh judgment they'd absorbed from the outside world, they now turned on each other in gay community. This obsession with masculinity fed something else, a fear of anything feminine. People call it no femmes or mask only, but at its core, it's a form of misogyny, looking down on femininity no matter who it shows up in. That straight-acting, hypermasculine image, something that originally helped gay men survive, has now become an excuse to judge, an excuse to attack people in their own community. Go back far enough, and the roots of this often trace back to childhood. Many gay men grew up bullied, simply for not fitting what a boy was supposed to be. So as adults, they overcorrect. They chase the gym, the extreme physique, mimicking straight men down to the smallest detail, desperate to erase that label from childhood. And here's the tragedy. People who should be standing together end up turning on each other instead. Not because they're cruel, because they're still, in some way, trying to outrun who they used to be. Sadly, none of this faded with progress. It just moved online, and in the internet age, capital got involved. The obsession with masculinity and muscle didn't go away. It got bigger, faster, and harder to escape. As real-world gay spaces disappeared, the bars, the bathhouses, the community centers, dating apps became the only place left to connect. And on those apps, a person stops being a person. They become a profile, a face, a body, an age, nothing more. In this fast-moving marketplace of looks, who you are on the inside barely matters. Abs and a good face, that's the passport. That's what gets you through the door. Going to the gym stopped being about joy or even health. It became something else, a kind of currency. Every drop of sweat, every calorie counted, all of it spent chasing one thing, a single right swipe. In this system, algorithms are not just passive tools, they can also shape who gets seen, who gets attention, and who is pushed aside. Some dating platforms have offered filters based on body type or gender expression. Features like these can make discrimination feel normal, presenting it as nothing more than personal preference. But there may be a less visible form of influence happening behind the screen. The systems that rank and recommend profiles can affect which users appear more often and which users receive less exposure. Research and reporting have raised concerns that people who fit mainstream beauty standards may be given greater visibility, while others are shown less often. Most users never see how these decisions are made, but the effect can be significant. Some people are placed at the center of the platform, while others are slowly pushed to the edges, not through one direct act of rejection, but through the hidden choices of the system itself. The strong focus on masculinity and muscular bodies within parts of the gay community is not simply a matter of personal taste. It has been shaped over decades by prejudice, social pressure, ideas about power, and commercial images of the ideal male body. In the 1950s, when openly gay people faced intense discrimination, appearing conventionally masculine could be a form of protection. After the Stonewall Uprising, new forms of gay identity became more visible, and ideas about masculinity were challenged, reclaimed, and reshaped. During the AIDS crisis, the muscular body also took on new meaning. At a time when gay men were widely associated with illness and weakness, strength and physical fitness could become symbols of health, control, and resistance. Today, those pressures have not disappeared. They have moved into a different system. On dating apps and social media, certain bodies may receive more attention, more visibility, and more social value. What may once have helped some people feel safer or more accepted can, over time, become a new source of pressure. The result is a narrow standard of appearance that many people feel expected to meet. A form of self-protection, shaped by history, can slowly become a rule, and that rule can leave many others feeling excluded, judged, or unseen. As long as people within the community continue to treat femininity as something lesser, and judge one another by narrow ideas of how a man should look or behave, the promise of pride and liberation remains incomplete. True freedom is not about replacing one set of expectations with another. It is not about forcing everyone to match a mainstream ideal of strength, masculinity, or the perfect body. It means allowing people to be vulnerable. It means making room for different personalities, different bodies, and different ways of expressing identity. And it means questioning the systems, both social and digital, that can reward some people while pushing others aside. For many, rejecting these pressures is about more than appearance. It is about taking back the right to define themselves on their own terms. And perhaps that is where liberation begins. Not in becoming what others expect, but in being able to live openly, honestly, and without apology.